Every day you make thousands of decisions that accumulate into the experience and character of your life. What you'll eat, what you'll wear, what you'll drive, listen to, buy, and discuss. The vast majority of those decisions are thoughtless and casual, but they're not random nor left to chance. We construct our lives in a world already formed in an existing culture, which is constantly pitching and directing who you are becoming. They tell us what we should look like, what we should want, how we should respond, and what we should believe. Our faith in Jesus doesn't inoculate us to these influences. Quite unnoticed, the world can form in us desires, which we imagine are natural and common. It seems to have always been this way. When you read the Bible, a story anchored in the Israelite people, it's easy to imagine that Israel was powerful and influential, the center of the story. But for most of their history, they were far from powerful. In fact, they too looked at their own lives and realized that the people around them seemed to be doing so much better. They had greater cities, bigger armies, and better harvests. Israel found who they were becoming also impacted by the world in which they lived. Take the Philistines as an example. The Philistines were a neighbor situated on the plain between Israel and the Mediterranean. The Philistines were known for their technological innovations in metal and also for their walled cities, powerful kings, and exotic culture. For the impoverished Israelites scraping out a living in the hills above, the possibilities and expectations of their neighbors filled them with restless desires of their own. If there was an image that embodied the power and possibilities of Philistia, it was a king, the pinnacle of the ancient world's wealth, power, and possibility. A king was the common denominator of all the great civilizations, from these Philistines to the semi-divine pharaohs of Egypt. But Israel had no king, and they never had. I think you understand their desire, though. Maybe not for a king, but for that missing piece of the good life. Happiness, peace, prosperity, respect, admiration, and that thing which promises it all. You see it on billboards and screens, magazines and bus stops. Subtly, a desire forms in you, a desire to have and be like what you see around you. And so too, Israel became obsessed with the possibility of a king. The Bible records Israel's demand. Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations have. Samuel, their prophet, tried to push back, warning them that a king would only enslave them again and use them and their possessions. They had God as their king, far better than a man. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, we still want a king, they said. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us into battle. Israel rejected the uniqueness by which God had called and led them. More than anything, they wanted to be like everyone else. The Old Testament has a great word for the unique way in which God wanted to lead his people. They were supposed to be a peculiar people. And it was by their uniqueness that God wanted to use them to be a light and a blessing to all other nations. I wonder if we even know what that word means. Who wants to be peculiar? Who wants to be strange and misunderstood? We want to be like everyone else. But in so doing, Israel risked abandoning how God intended to use them amongst the other nations. How could Israel not see this? After he had rescued them while they were slaves, after he had called nobodies like Gideon to lead them to victory, after he had blessed outsiders like Ruth who were ignored and forgotten by everyone else, after he had spoken to the least of them, like the boy Samuel in the tabernacle, couldn't they at least recognize that God led in ways the world didn't? God's story is a resounding echo of his blessing on their uniqueness. But Israel could only see it as a curse, an embarrassment. All they wanted was to be normal, like everyone else. I wonder if we can still recognize it. Recognize that God is using things this world despises, turning the values of this world upside down, forming for himself peculiar people, and by them blessing the world distracted by its infatuations. Who isn't guilty of failing to embrace all that we have been given? The freedom Christ has offered from the enslavement of our own expectations and obsessions. But now is that moment, a new moment, a chance to turn away from the pressures of this world and to instead live into the fullness of life God is offering. A peculiar way of peace and joy and fullness. Listen.